Children were disappearing. No one knew where they were or how the trick was done, but from the village midst, they'd up and gone. The parents gathered at the talking tree and asked him what he thought they all should do. He curled a bow and brought it under chin and said, "As none of you can see, and so you turn to me, here's what I think. You are not yet bereft. Turn to the children you have left. Ask them what is best." Janitha the squirrel stepped forward. Janitha worried and she furied for the children's sake, so up she spake, sitting straight. "If you will let me climb into your canopy, I'll find them where they are, and then I'll run and tell them this is where they need to be." The vast tree nodded, or maybe the wind just blew, but up Janitha flew. The children Janitha sought were not far off. They huddled in a little nook, hollowed in a hill, with sunflowers for a roof, resting on a bed of green, thick as cream, that spilled beneath their feet, and each to each spilled dreams. Sparkle-eyed Ellie said, "Last night I saw Minnie sitting on my bed, just on the edge, and then she said, 'Help me, please. I'm stuck in a story.' And while she spoke, I heard a single note. It blew in on the breeze and planted like a seed in my memory." The excitement of the others grew. Each one had heard it too, a child, a note. A story spoke. Matthew told his. "Every day I'm made." Sana too. "Every day I'm told to say." Sparkle-eyed Ellie's was. "Every day I'm told to do." And Joe Wind blew. "Every day I'm told not to." Then Sam softly said, "Every day I'm grabbed." Aloysius, crying, added, "Every day I'm sad." Martha, sighing long, "Every day I say, love me." And lastly, Dione sobbed, "Every day you don't want me." Each one had a dream of a lost child visiting, with a heart broke, and a single note, and a story that must be spoke. "Hurry, little ones, come to the tree. Children are missing." Janitha had arrived. Martha looked at Matthew. Sana looked at Sam. All the children rolled their eyes. All the children laughed. "You call us little?" And then they ran. When our squirrel friends leap tree to tree, the whole wide world is what they see. When our squirrel friends leap tree to tree, the whole wide world is what they see. They see that we are desperately seeking. They see that we are desperately seeking. 8 children, 8 dreams, 8 tones, 8 keys, all in the nook with a sunflower roof, singing their notes where the soft moss grows. The talking tree's limbs drooped low. The children would have to know the risk they were in, they and their friends, if Aidos didn't stir the bowl. For many turnings of globe, humans were shunned by Aidos, so angry that eyes for things meant children were left unseen. But it doesn't make sense, fumed the tree, for Aidos the balance to leave, just so not to see the harm that would be in a world that's forgotten her name and why she first ever came. She should consider the loss and the horrible cost to the children of a world with no shame. Words tumbled about in his head, trying to fashion a meaning that said that even though it shouldn't be so, these children would have to go, even though all together, still all alone, into the unknown. His limbs drooped still lower, and he sighed, so little wind. Soon it would be gone altogether, and hope, a blown feather, fallen. Just as he was becoming too sad, up unto his roots so vast, came the children a-running, holding hands all a-tumbling, full singing their confident chant.
Gonna open some windows, let the air in, we busting out our friends. Gonna open some windows, let the air in, we busting out our friends.
And their sweeping in brought such a strong wind, his great branches stirred, and his heart gathered hope with their words. The talking tree gave a short cough to make sure his tears wouldn't drop, and when finally composed, said, "There's some things you should know." "We know our friends are trapped," they answered back. "We've seen them 'cause we dreamed them. They're out on a limb and we're gonna free them." They all stood stout, chests full and puffed out, till slender doubt put its weight on their backs, and they suddenly sat, and looking up at the tree, humbly asked, "So now, can you tell us how?" And behind them, Janitha the wise shivered hard and closed her eyes. Though she knew it must be, she still didn't want to see the children all alone, facing Aidos. "Tell me, children," said the tree, "do you know about Aidos?" From their closed faces he could see he'd best begin at the beginning. Long ago, no human walked alone. You had Aidos, she, the one who sees the single unconnected energy and causes it to interweave by bringing to bear a pleasure in the meet when beings share. The tree looked in their faces and saw no comprehension there. He tried again. Aidos is the spirit that breathes life into the feeling that we are all one being. We call her a wind, a reverberation, though she exists too in physical form when she chooses. Aidos sets the great bell ringing, the great bowl spinning, the bowl in which the stories churn and, intermingling, turn into something new. But some unknown time ago, Aidos left in fury because some wanted to freeze a certain way of seeing in which they got to play kings in place. Ignoring Aido's message to venerate balanced measure, they found ways to evade her gentle pressure. And the children became but pawns in this game. In outrage, she left and vowed never to return. But now, without her wind, the great bowl, which it is when viewed within, doesn't spin. The great Nell doesn't tell. So now all are caught in various ways of saying the same story, held fast in the traps, betrayal, and abandonment. Here he stopped to let his words sink in, and with relief thought that the children were starting to grasp them. Dione, with long limbs and rich coffee skin, was first to begin the questioning. "I think I see," said she, "but if Aidos has left and must come back if we're to see our friends again, then..." Sam, gray-eyed, fleet of foot, with hair that waved all ways, jumped in. Precisely! Precisely was a word he'd recently learned and loved to say. Precisely! What could win her back if she's so mad we went off track? Aloysius, small, but with strong grasp, with smooth black hair that shone like glass, added, "Just tell us where to go and what to do." "But wait," said Martha, pale of face and wide of brow, who always wore a serious frown. "Remember, in the dreams, they told us stories. Don't you think it means..." "Precisely!" Sam jumped up and pounded the tree's trunk. "Tree, don't you see? We have to speak the stories." Quiet Sana, lolling on the grass, with nut-brown skin and manner akin, asked, "What about the notes?" Sam raised his fist and was about to say his favorite word when Ellie, of the eyes that flashed, always ready with a laugh, added, "This blade needs trimming. Don't tell me. Let me guess. These notes we learned must represent..." Matthew gripped Sam's shoulders to forestall his jumping up again and said, "Clues." Matthew, of few words, tight woven hair and with nomadic stature, used few words, but the few words used were usually of use. Of even fewer words was Joe Wind, pale-eyed, round all over, even round in thought, and had a lisp and blush to show it. Softly now she stroked the great tree's trunk, unaware that on her all eyes focused. Despite her fear of speech, she had a way of summarizing that led her friends to rely on the insights she caught sight of. "You're thinking, Joe Wind, don't deny it," said Sam, almost as if jealous, almost as if he resented the hoarding of something that should be partitioned. "Well," Joe Wind generally held closely to small, neat stones, well-defined, well-grounded. "I think..." The children moved closer to Joe Wind's feet, then all leaned in to hear her speak. "I think..." The others almost fell upon her lap. They leaned so long to hear what she would tell. I think the tree should speak." They all sat back and sighed. Now it was the tree that held their eyes. "You are all very quick to see," said the tree, "and I admire, too, your willingness to do. But Joe Wind is right. There's more to know to shape a proper judgment." Matthew frowned. He suddenly found he didn't feel so very quick at all. "I am the keeper of the bell. I hold the hope, according to the prophecy, that foretold that one day children would come more moved by love and solidarity than any other order of thing, and that they would make the harmony that soothes Aido's fury. But there is a risk, for if you try this and break hands or show discord, it could release full force the wrath of Aidos, and hope would be no more." They sat in silence for a bit, while Janitha hopped about and fretted and asked if there was something she could do to shrink the risk or help the children do it. At last, Sana raised her head and said, "So," she gave a warning glance to Sam, "so the notes are the keys to setting our friends free?" Sam jumped up, but as everyone glared at him, he sat back down again. "Do you remember yours?" Martha asked Dione. For answer, she sang. "But that's how it ends," said Dione. "Matthew's was first." "But how do we know that order matters?" said Matthew. "Or, if an order, that the first way sung was best," Ellie said, with frustration. Saving friends, she thought, was starting to feel like a heel stretch on slippery wet, or a ship adrift. She wasn't alone in this. They all pretended to ponder, while secretly felt they were floundering. The talking tree shook his majestic canopy, as if to say, "All eyes on me." Children, before you plan, you should have more information. And don't be ashamed to admit feeling fear at what you hear. I, too, am afraid. This isn't a game. Aloysius didn't even know he was tense. Till then, when it was admitted him, till then, when he felt tension slowly leave him. "What then," he said, "must we know?" "Not just tones," said the tree, "but souls." Sana shivered then, not knowing what knowing portended. The tree held them in his mind, silently. "Sam is right," said he. "The stories have to be spoken. They're like a spell that has to be broken. Your friends are in them, and you are too, but you don't know them. And now they do. And breaking through means wading through a lot of pain and figuring out how to heal it so we can begin again." Suddenly, as if in a daze, Sana sang.
The children must be freed. We're trapped in old stories. Our egos fled, so there's no help left. Unless we woo her, bring our lives to her with strong meter and good measure, showing we treasure her.
They were ready. The tree sighed. It was time.
Circle around under my bough. You won't see a thing till all your notes ring.
Try not to worry, children, for once you're in the bell, all will be well if you listen to the stories your friends tell. Hold hands. Make the circle dance. Hear the stories brought. Offer your hearts when they're sought. Break the circle only when you let another person in, and then close it again. Remember, always trust your heart, each of you. It will tell you what to do. And trust each other, too. One by one, they took each other's hands. Matthew, Sana, Ellie, Joe, Sam, Aloysius, Martha. Dione was last. They slowly circled round, ducking neath his massive bough. Looking under it, they wondered if they'd see a bell, or a bowl, perhaps. Instead, they saw just trees broad back, protectively dense, coolly black, that, like a sentinel, seemed dutifully listening, on the point of being ready to respond to a clarion song. The children began and held each note long. Matthew, Sana, Ellie, Joe Wind, Sam, Aloysius, Martha, Dione, and the blended tones made almost a sigh, almost a moan, almost a lamentation. And then came an amazing transformation, and their call dissolved the sentinel, or caused a shift in shape, and in its place a window came, a window that closed in the middle like shutters with a latch, but instead of shutters, it held glass. Each side was quarter-paned, and as they watched, the two sides twained, opening in to what? Nobody knew. Great-hearted Matthew's noble cranium leaned in to twaining glass, leaning, wide-eyed then, and then he tumbled in. Sana gasped, but she held fast, and before she knew it, down the hatch, she was tumbling too. Ellie, Joe, Sam all held hands. Aloysius pulled in Martha, and Dione flew in last. No need for Tree to ask they not forget to hold each other's hands. Each hand was tightly clasped as, one by one, they helped each other up, and facing fear, looked into the abstruse, the place where Aidos no longer blew.
When the ravens fly across the winds, across the times, teardrops in the sky, single paths downward fly. We make our future, take wing, our future, take wing. When the ravens swirl, tightly massed, upward curl, flowing through the folds, future's hand reaching back. We make our future, take wing, our future, take wing. Ravens in the sky, tightly massed, upward fly, flashing in the sun, each a star, each is one. We make our future, take wing, our future, take wing.
They stood before a vast curved wall of bronze, where all along the circling walls were tapestries that glowed with a strange and streaming light, an eerie, gleaming, steaming, grumbling light that tossed like tongues of fire. One thing was clear: there was no gladness here. Not knowing what to do, they slowly moved in closer to the middle of the room, where all could see 8 tapestries, each holding stories of great wrongs that, though silent, longed to speak. The tales all seemed to wail with pregnant silence, while all the while the light that seemed to scream and bleed streamed forth like hands that reached. Jo Wynn felt a wailing in her head. Her knee joints, weakened and would have failed, collapsed, but Ellie and Sam held her fast. And despite the horrors of the scenes, they could not stop their witnessing. In one, a child stood standing on a block, his head bowed down, his thin legs bearing marks. Adults all round the scene, unmoved, were bidding. In another, babies squalled, strewn like detritus, tossed in straw along a dirty wall, while in the center, a wet nurse bent, doubled over in a coughing fit. In still others, there were beatings, and perhaps the worst, treeings. Dangling naked from a tree, a baby hung, was being strung unwillingly by a maidservant, disapprovingly. The children almost could not bear to see the sadness they were being called upon to witness. And they wondered how to heal a pain that doubled over on itself again and again. And then all eyes seemed drawn into the furthest tapestry, in which a purple road wound fitfully, this way, that way, any way but one way, through wafting fields of gold, and in the fields dead hedges made of stakes and brush closed in the fields in places, a forest in the distance, and long hills from which a trail of smoke distilled. And down this road, upon this scene, there slowly came a boy in tunic green. First feet were seen, then legs, then torso grew into a little boy with sack and stick. His head was bowed and his back bent. And as he closer drew, his chin lifted, his look shifted. A change came in his eyes. From uncaring dim, surprise inhabited them. Surprise, indeed. It was the children he was seeing. Surprise, indeed. It was their friend, Michael, staring. And the light from the tapestry streamed and became all at once his arms, reaching. Matthew took one hand, Dione the other, and all straining hard, pulled out their first brother. He seemed more thin and sad than when he'd first left. But when his tears dried at last, seeing his friends, how they drew love around him, sadness dimmed, and in the circle, gladness brimmed. He told them everything he'd seen, the children sold, the slaving, the beatings hidden and paraded, the grim visages perpetrating them, and the false reasons proclaimed for them. But the worst of all, he said, was feeling so small and abandoned, so ignored and lost, so alone while tempest tossed. But sitting that morning by a tree, his eyes brimming, at first nothing seeing, through his tears shimmered a little bird that glimmered all over with color and light, that said, "There's still life, and you'll see it when you walk your own road and greet it, when you ask it to take your hand."
Take my hand, take my hand, take my hand, take my hand. I know
My hand, take my hand.
if I'm alone,
My hand, take my hand.
that there's a
My
road
hand, take my hand.
with living things there too. Be there with me, be there with me, please.
Once heard, Michael's story was repeated, every word, and one by one The healing with each tapestry was done. Each burden of shame was lifted again and again, and shifted, became new life from flame, a wind from deadly still, that round the bowl circled, and a circling word, Aidos, was stirring. Dione led the chant to welcome Aidos back.
Won't you come back to us, idols? Won't you come back to us, idols? Won't you come back to us, idols?
And as the great bowl gained speed, suddenly the children were back under the tree, and the tree glowed with new feeling, and though his eyes were closed, was nonetheless seeing every child, every story, every being, and marveling at their mysteries. So through dance and song, the children made the world revolve, healed old pain, and convinced Aidos to come again. But now she's back. We must keep her, and through following the children, become leaders. And in remaking what's dead and cold, our more joyful and much more interesting future will unfold.
Wind blowing in, new life begins, and new stories will unfold that embrace
Once we decide to stop feeding class with our energy, stop feeding the notion that we must bestow on some the title best while turning our backs on the rest, and feed instead love and good fellowship, we'll be in our future freedom.